Well, I guess it's time for another record tag video. I've been really enjoying these. This is my third one now, and basically it's just a list of prompts that get me to go into my record catalog behind me and grab an album that fits the prompt. And this list is Neve the Prog Nerds. Record list, or I guess her prompts. And she and I have collaborated on a number of items. She's amazing. If you haven't already subscribed to her, I've left the link down below to do so. Go and show her some love, because these are a lot of fun. There's a little bit of a crossover. I should have probably watched this one first before I did mine last week, but you know, them's the breaks. Great minds think alike and all that. So I have chosen different albums for the prompts that kind of overlap, and like last time, I tried to keep it one per band so that I'm not just showing the same band over and over and over again. So here we go, diving in. And I'm just going to rearrange these a little because I have a few things on top that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Okay, so the first one is an 80s prog record from a band that formed in the 80s. And this one, I know a lot of people are going to go for Marillion on this one, and that's great. I wish I had IQ with me. I mean, I've got the CD, but I'm trying to keep to record format. So the one that I chose, and it might be a little bit of an argue, but it's Fate's Warning. And this is their The Spectre Within record. These guys kind of came onto the scene around the same time as like Queensryche and a little bit even before Dream Theater. Now I believe this one was recorded in 1985 under Metal Blade Records. And it is just brilliant. So if you like that kind of like raw, very early progressive metal, check out Fate's Warning, and they're still putting out music today, and they're fantastic. So great record there. Okay, the second prompt, an album by a three-piece band. There's quite a few, but I wanted to showcase, unlike I wanted to go like Klaatu or Rush, I decided to go to Motorpsycho. And this is one of my favorite albums from them, Still Life with Eggplant. The final track off of here, Afterglow, is just heart-wrenching. It's so great. Ratcatcher is like a 17-minute like trip. And it starts off with Hell, parts 1 to 3, that then concludes on the album that comes out afterwards. Now, the problem with this album, unfortunately, I ordered it from like a second-hand place, and they didn't... This was when everything was still closed down, so they shipped it to me, but they didn't do a very good job at it, and it had massive water damage all throughout it, so the whole sleeve here is just completely warped. The music still sounds great, but I'm really saddened that the actual music sleeve here is all warped to shreds. So it's a little bit of a sad time. Number 3 is a Canterbury Scene album, and I have to be perfectly honest with you guys, I don't have any. I don't even have like Caravan or Soft Machine or like any of the big ones. It's one of the few progressive rock genres that have eluded me up to this point. I know I need to get into it. I just haven't really had the chance. I feel like Canterbury Scene hasn't really migrated across the pond as much as a lot of the other progressive rock styles have, but maybe one day I'll dive in and take the trip for that. So that goes right on to number 4, an Impulse Buy record. And this is the latest one of the Impulse Buy records. I'm horrible with Impulse Buy records. And so this is the soundtrack to Birds of Prey. I've loved this album. Last year, at the beginning of last year, this was really what was keeping me going. It's got so much of those like boss bitch kind of essence to it, kind of that get up and go, you know, don't listen to the man, don't let him get you down, go your own way kind of an idea. My favorite tracks off of here are The Joke's on You and Smile, but I think my favorite one is Lonely Gun. So those 3 tracks back to back are really good. And I love this film. If you haven't seen this film by now, please go ahead and do so. It might be DC's best film. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, number 5, an album people wouldn't suspect that you own. I have a lot. I mean, if you were just to kind of look at me and look at my channel and all that, like you've got a whole bunch in here that either my mom gave me or I'm just a fan of. But I figured this was probably going to be a good contender. That's Baby Metal. This is Metal Resurgence, and the last 2 tracks, Tale of Destinies and the one English version, really fantastic stuff. I think they had like people from like Dragon Force helped them out with this record. It's very J-pop, committee-led style of music, but it's all metal, and they've got like 3 teen idols fronting it, and their voices are beautiful and brilliant. So yeah, Metal Resistance, probably my favorite baby metal album. They had one before and one after, and I'm not as much of a fan of those ones, but I really do like this one. So this is also another, if I'm being honest, another impulse buy. Okay, number 6, an album with great keyboards. I've already covered a couple of these already, but I wanted to go to the master. You know, when you think of great keyboards, you think of Rick Wakeman, or at least I think of Rick Wakeman. He was one of my, and still is one of my favorite keyboardists. And this album, The Red Planet, came out last year and was one of my all-time favorite albums of that year. It almost made to number 1. This was the first album of 2020 that really surprised me. Like, it was the first one that I'm like, okay, this is good, rather than, it's serviceable. And I love it. You know, I love the tracks that we have on here. I love that it goes right back to that proggy style, because he likes to try and experiment with different things, but I really think he's a master of the prog. And I love the 2, 4, 6, 8 tracks that are on here. All of them are stellar works, and this can hold toe-to-toe with his big 70s output like King Henry, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and King Arthur. I think this one fits right in with all those. Okay, number 7, a album by a non-prog band that made a proggy album. So I already covered one of these albums in my last video review, or I guess my last record haul, but what I wanted to talk about is the follow-up to that. And that is Green Day with their 21st Century Breakdown. I already talked about American Idiot, which I still hold in my heart as being a progressive rock album. And this one is a follow-up to that. Thematically, at least. Maybe not necessarily narratively a follow-up, but it definitely holds like a lot of the same kind of styles of music. I mean, you've got 3 acts on it to be like this full style, this whole concept album, and I of course got the special edition that comes with like a lyrical book and a lyrical story, and I love the art that goes, like, it's very Banksy before Banksy became like a huge thing. And then you have the 3 records for Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and then at the very back you've got the CD right in there. So yeah, Green Day's 21st Century Breakdown. The other one that I probably could have inputted here, and I'm going to do a little bit of a shimmy, is, where is it? Yeah, here it is. I'm just going to call it. This is My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade, another concept album, all revolved around death. And I think it is a pretty proggy album. Like, it's not a full-on progressive rock album like Green Day's works were. But, you know, in terms of like a concept album, and especially leading the cause in terms of like the emo bands of the day, new metal were kind of on their way out, and this was what rock was doing at the time. You know, it's still got some amazing work on there, so I'm going to include that in there. Okay, let's see here. Next up, number 8, an album you got, the album that got you into progressive rock. So I already talked about Selling England by the Pound, which I've got here. This was the one that did it for me. I saw the Musical Box perform this album live, and I just was hooked. So I wanted to talk about the next album that got me into that, and that is King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. This was the one that I listened to directly after, or almost in tandem with, and if I'm honest, my favorite tracks were all the tracks except for 21st Century Schizoid Man. Never really got into it. I wasn't really a big fan of their more jazzy, more like bombastic tracks. I was big into I Talk to the Wind and Epitaph. And of course, In the Court of the Crimson King was the one that just made me fall in love with it. This also goes to, so this was, I believe, the first pressing that doesn't sound all that great, at least first Canadian pressing. It doesn't sound all that great, if I'm being honest. So the moment that they reissued it and re-released it, I had to pick it up because there's so many different sounds on it. It also has the original gatefold that unfortunately my original copy does not have. It's just a single old record, and yeah, so it doesn't have the full gatefold that I was really excited for. There we go. So anyway, In the Court of the Crimson King is probably the next album that solidified my love for it. Okay, let's see here. Number 9. Pick an album from a discography of 5 or less. This was actually really interesting. Again, I wanted to do Klaatu because they only have 5 albums, but I decided, you know what? I want to showcase a band that doesn't have, or that hasn't been on here yet. And I decided to do A Perfect Circle. And I believe A Perfect Circle has 5 albums. They have their first album, this album, Emotive, and then I don't know if you would count the other Emotive album, like the live album that they put out with some other songs, and then Eat the Elephant. So that's 5. I mean, sometimes you can say that's even 4. But this is their second album, 13th Step. I love this album, especially when I was in high school. All the tracks on here are brilliant. The one that really got me into this and made me fall in love with it was The Noose. I friggin' love The Noose. That track I start blaring. But even like the 3 back-to-back-to-back tracks, unfortunately on the CD, I believe it starts off with Outsider, Crimes, and The Nurse Who Loved Me. And it might actually go into Pet and Lullaby. Those tracks just kind of bleed right into one another, and it is just gorgeous. So Perfect Circle, my favorite album from them, which is definitely this one, really, really brings me back to high school for that. Okay, number 10, an album you have to crank the volume up for. So I've picked 2 for very different reasons. The first one is Steve Hackett's Please Don't Touch, and it's specifically for the title track of Please Don't Touch, because Steve Hackett actually writes in parentheses in here, for maximum effect, this track should be blasted to as loudly as possible. So right on there, and I agree, it's got some really fun soundscapes on there, and it really showcases just the influence that Steve Hackett had of Genesis at that time. The other one that I have to blast is, of course, the soundtrack to Interstellar. This is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Those deep organ sounds on this that clashes with those really high up notes, all performed on the organ. I can't help but just blasting it as loud as I possibly can. And it's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite soundtracks. The overall thing of this is just brilliant. You know, I'm not a huge fan of Hans Zimmer. I feel like he's fallen into the same trap of just basically doing that Zimmer wahs all the time. So I'm not a big fan of those, but I think it really, really works for Interstellar. So I love that one. Okay, number 11, a chill out album. So I've got 2. The first one being some jazz, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. I love Miles Davis, but I do have to be in the right mood for Miles Davis. Otherwise, it just feels a little much at times. I feel like Some Kind of Blue is probably his most accessible stuff. I'm still trying to find Bitches Brew. That one might be my favorite of his, but this one is one that I'll listen to a little bit more often, especially when I need just something funky, fresh, a little bit on the lighter side, but still has some challenges to it, you know? So Some Kind of Blue is my chill out album, along with a contemporary artist known as Perfect Beings. And this is their 3rd album as of Ver, and I really hope that they put out another album. They only have 3 albums to their name. Perfect Beings, their first album, is still my favorite of theirs. Perfect Beings 2, which is okay, but then Ver came around, and this is a double album where there's really just 4 tracks off of here, and each side is a different track. It's really a really nice chill album. Like, it's not as challenging as their first 2 albums are, but it is quite complex and quite interesting. So I do put it on for like a chill out album. I really do enjoy it, and I come back to it quite often. So if you haven't checked out Ver by now, definitely go ahead and do so. Okay, number 12, an album you play when you're angry. I don't get angry. It's really, really interesting. Like, it's, I actually have, it's an issue that I'm working around, because instead of getting angry, I just kind of take it, you know? So I'm kind of working on that a little bit. So this is going to be like an album that I listen to when I'm frustrated or when I just need to chill. Which is a little bit different than a chill out album. And so for me, this is the ultimate good vibes album. This is one that I'll listen to whenever I need just a little bit of time to myself. And I know it's going to sound weird, but it's Brain Salad Surgery from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. For me, it's like, again, if we're going into the genesis of how I got into progressive rock, we had Selling England by the Pound, Then it went straight into In the Court of the Crimson King, and then the next one up was Brain Salad Surgery. And Brain Salad Surgery really helped me out at a lot of very difficult times, and then from then, it's just become my ultimate like chill out album. So there we go. I really need to get like the reissued and remastered version, because this is still like the first pressing, and it's seen better days. Like you can already see, there's quite substantial damage on there. So yeah, whenever I can, I'll try to find a replacement for this album. But yeah, this is my ultimate, you know, when I'm angry, or I guess when I'm frustrated and just need a little bit of time. The only other album that I can think of that would fit this bill when I was like an angsty teenager and when I was getting all that white middle class rage, I would listen to a lot of Limp Bizkit. And unfortunately, I have donated all my CDs, but I used to have Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water. And I still do listen to them from time to time on streaming services. So, yeah, that's where I'm at for that. Okay, number 13, an album you have more than one copy of. So I already showed In the Court of the Crimson King. I already showed my Beatles one. So this is, I have a couple of copies of, there we go, Rush's Hemispheres. So I have their first pressing here of Rush's Hemispheres right there. And then I also have, which I keep in a separate sleeve, a picture disc of Hemispheres that came out. So, as with most picture discs, it doesn't sound great. I think one of these days I'm just going to get it framed and keep it on the wall. But until then, there's my 2 copies of Hemispheres. One for, you know, showing off and being like, hey, check out what I have. And then the other one for actually playing. So yeah, Rush's Hemisphere, I have 2 copies of. Okay, let's see here. Number 14, we've got an instrumental album. And I already showed a few, like, I didn't want to do any soundtracks, and I already showed, like, Rick Wakeman. But I wanted to show an album that I haven't shown yet, and I still consider it an all-time masterpiece, and that is The Earth Is Not a Cold, Dead Place by Explosions in the Sky. This is a full-on masterpiece, and one of these days I'll do a full masterpiece theater on it. If I haven't already, I may have. I'm really bad at that. But yeah, Explosions in the Sky is one of my favorite post-rock, math rock outfits, and this is my favorite album of theirs. This was actually my first post-rock outfit, and I remember listening to it when I was in university, and this is another one of those ultimate chill-out albums. I'll just put it on and let myself drift away. I remember investing in this one, and all of a sudden all we can do is wave to each other, or all of a sudden I miss everybody. One of those albums, I can't remember which one. I listened to both of those when I first moved away from home, and this really got me through that difficult period. So, love this. If you haven't listened to it already and you love that kind of experimental post-rock stuff, this is the go-to. This is first up on the list. Okay, number 15, an album by a band that you love that disappointed you. So I already talked about this one a little bit, but I wanted to go into a little bit more depth. This is Hail to the Thief from Radiohead. Now, I have grown to really appreciate and fall in love with this album, but I remember when this first came out, this was the first incidence when I was really, really looking forward to an album, especially after the 3 big punches that started with OK Computer, went right into Kid A, which is my favorite album from them. I was a little bit let down with Amnesia, but I did find that the more I listened to it, the more I started to really enjoy it and get more out of it. It has diminished returns, but I figured, okay, it's their creative stint, and this one, like, they let it off with 2 + 2 = 5, and I was, like, cooked. I was ready. And I remember sitting down listening to this album and being really, really disappointed by it. And it has only really been within the past 5 years that I've really started to get into it and kind of get what they were doing with this album. I don't think they completely succeeded in putting down what I think they were trying to get, but I'm starting to really get what they were putting down with this album. It is a monster, and yeah, if you take your time with it, hopefully it will start to give yourself into it. Let's see here. Okay, number 16. I've got 2 for this one, because number 16 is an album that sounds better on CD, which this was a great prompt. It was fantastic. Because most of the time it's the other way around, right? So I actually have 2, and both of them are pretty much for the same reason. The first one is Lateralis from Tool. So I actually have the CD, and I actually picked up the CD after I picked up the record, mainly because a girlfriend of mine way back in university gave me a burnt copy of Tool from Lateralis. Like, she was really into that whole Tool scene, and she got me into Tool. And she's like, you got to sit down and listen to it. You will thank me later. And then afterwards, I had to pick up the album, so I've got the whole album here. Afterwards, and then I picked up this one. But the actual LP, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one, doesn't sound great, if I'm being perfectly honest. It doesn't sound great. Part of it is the way that the tracks have been divided on this. So the way that this has been divided is that side A has The Grudge, Un Beau Apocalypse, the Patient, and then ends with Mantra. And Mantra really should start the third side. And so on the third side, or I guess the fourth side, that's where you have Reflections, Triad, and then they have Fapta Ode, or Oad. And I'm not a big fan of how they split that up. But also, on Reflections, like, it's a picture disc, and it just does not sound good. Like, I don't know, picture discs, they're hit and miss. They either sound fine or they sound horrible. You don't really have like a good sounding picture disc, or at least I haven't incurred one yet. So definitely the CD quality, oddly enough, is better. As well as the way that the album is structured, because I have to basically play the first side, then the fourth side, and then the second and third side, just to kind of keep the flow of the album going. So Tool is the first one with Lateralis. And then the second one is actually Still Life. So this, again, is another picture disc. And I mean, it's a gorgeous picture disc. Like, I will give my hats off to Opeth. Like, for picture discs, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous picture. But that first track of The Moor is, it's not good. It's not good. It doesn't sound good at all. It's compressed. It's blah. Especially when you compare it to the copy of Opeth's Still Life that I have, which is like, it comes with the 5.1 surround sound on the bonus disc. So you have the main disc there, and then if you flip the book over, you've got the DVD disc here with the 5.1 surround sound, and it sounds crisp. It sounds beautiful. So yeah, that's that. I really do like the CD production on that one. So that was a great prompt. All right, number 17. A new prog rock discovery. So I don't know if you would necessarily qualify this as prog rock, but this is a band artist that I've really gotten into. I've known about him for a long, long time, but it is only recently that I'm discovering a lot more of his output, and that is Vangelis. So I picked this one up last year, and I've got a number of them in the back, as well as John and Vangelis. The Friends of Mr. Cairo. I only need, I believe, the last album, because they put out 3. So I have the first, second, and I'm just looking for that third one. And this has been a very, very rewarding experience, because I'm loving the chill vibes that are on here. I'm loving that synthwave sound. It's very, very fun. So there's the new prog rock discovery for me. And I know it's not all that new, but it's new for me. All right, number 18, an album you had to buy the deluxe edition for. So this one kind of goes without saying. It's Aryon's The Theater Equation, which is the live version of The Human Equation. The Human Equation is one of my all-time favorite albums. It's my favorite album from Aryon. So I had to splurge, and I had to get the signed copy. This one comes with the 5 discs. So when you open it up, you got the Blu-ray and the 2 DVDs. Unfortunately, the Blu-ray doesn't work. And they could have sent me the Blu-ray, and I can't remember if they did or not. Anyway, the Blu-ray unfortunately doesn't work for me, but the 2 DVDs do. And then you have the CDs in the back there. And then this massive, massive book about all the different singers that they brought on board. I mean, the fact that they were able to get James LeBray on here, and so many brilliant singers. They couldn't get Michael Eckefelt because Michael Eckefelt was supposed to be Fierce, so they got Annika von Hirschenbergen to fill in that role. And let's see if I can pick. Oh, and of course they got Irene Jensen as Passion, and her voice is just soaring. They got Heather Findlay as Love, because who else but Heather Findlay could you get to play Love? I mean, I can't think of another person that has that heavenly, divine sound than that. Let's see here. And then, yeah, there's Annika von Hirschenbergen as Fear. So it has the whole cast of characters, and it is just, mwah. It's brilliant, beautiful, and I would splurge on this one. So that's one that I absolutely had to get the deluxe edition for. Okay, number 19, triple albums, 1 studio and 1 live album. This was a fun prompt. This was really a fun prompt, and I've got a bunch of albums on here in terms of studio that were like CD, but I decided to go for this one here. So this one's Swans, To Be Kind, and it is officially a triple album. So you open it up, and you got the one album in here, one album in here, and then one album right in the middle, and each album is just heart-wrenchingly beautiful. If you like that experimental noise rock, this is the album for you. It's my favorite Swans album. It is a beast if you love that experimental sound noise rock. Yeah, so Swans, To Be Kind, absolute masterpiece. Absolutely a masterpiece. And then for a triple live album, I was thinking about that. I was thinking, do I want to do Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Welcome Back, My Friends? Do I want to do Yes's Yes Show or Songs? I think it's Yes Shows. No, Yes Songs, one of those. And then I got a whole bunch of new ones that I've already showcased, such as Riverside's Lost and Found, and Devin Townsend's Order of Magnitude, Volume 1. But I decided to go with the newest addition to my live library, because I've gotten a whole lot of them lately. And that is the new release, the reissuing of Pink Floyd's Delicate Sound of Thunder. It is a triple album because you have 3 discs to it. I know originally it was released as a double album, but as you can see, there are 3 discs in there with 9 new songs that were not originally released, and it is brilliant and beautiful, and I've been listening to it pretty much non-stop throughout the spring and summer this year. So yeah, Delicate Sound of Thunder from Pink Floyd. Yay! Okay, number 20, an album with the best bass. There are a lot. I mean, I could choose anything from Yes, because Chris Squire is just one of my favorite basses of all time. Same with Rush, with Geddy Lee. But I decided to choose the album that has my favorite bass of any song, and that is Camel with Mood Madness. The bass work found on Another Night is my favorite. It is absolutely my favorite. It has that chugging guitar of that boom 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 boom. It's just so crunchy and so prominent. I really do love this album, and that alone is enough for the bass work on here. And honestly, I should probably know the fella's name that does the bass, but I don't. So chime off into the comments who's the bass player for Camel for that album. Okay. Let's see here. Number 21, an album that I have pre-ordered. So I took this to mean an album that I pre-ordered and then got upon release, so it wasn't released when I bought it. And that is The Great Adventure from the Neil Morris Band. The moment that this album was announced, I knew I had to own it because the similitude of a dream was perfect. And if they were doing a follow-up, I had to get it. I was disappointed with this. I think it's not nearly as good as the other one, but I still do enjoy it. So, yeah, The Great Adventure by the Neil Morris Band was one that I pre-ordered, and it came in on time. So there we go. Okay, coming down to the final 2, I'm going to rush a little bit because I only have 3 minutes left on the memory card before I'm done. The first album I ever bought, I already talked about Opeth's the Watershed. This was the first one that I bought new. So I'm going to talk about the second one, which is Arcade Fire's Neon Bible. Again, got this brand new when it came out. This was probably the second album that I ever bought brand new. So I'm going to, again, just speed on through to number 23, the last one, an album by a band that more people should know about. This one was easy for me. This is Fido. I'm sure a lot of people in the prog sphere already know about Fido. This is one of my favorite albums from him. It's the third album in the Great Leap trilogy that started with Great Leap, Doomsday Afternoon, and finally Infernal. I could talk for days about this album, but I'm just going to say go and listen to it. It's brilliant. You have to check it out. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. Doomsday Afternoon is in my top 5 albums of all time. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is Cardiacs. Unfortunately, our main man here, Tim, passed away, 2 years ago, and it broke my heart, and I wish more people knew about this band. Great 80s, like, punk progressive rock. So there we go. Definitely check out Cardiac, specifically Sing to God. Dirty Boy and Wireless are the tracks to check out. And that's it. I'm sorry I had to rush, but it seems like my memory card only has a few more minutes left before I have to get in there and start pruning away. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do this one. I'll leave the prompts down below, as well as the hashtag of Prog Nerd Vinyl Tag 2021. I hope that you guys enjoy this one. Let me know of your favorite album. Comment down below, like, share, and all that other stuff. And that's about it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.